John Woo is back in America with Silent Night, starring Joel Kinnaman. This film follows a father whose son was killed in gang wars, and now he goes after the gang during Christmas time. John Woo, of course, one of our great action directors of the 90s, gave us such films as Face Off, and he is back in an American film. I think this is his first American film since 2003, I believe, was that Paycheck movie with Ben Affleck. I believe that was his last American film. So it's been quite 20 years, I would want to say, with John Woo for an American film. And this film should be great, and it's not. And that's a really big issue with this movie. But it's not that it's just not even great, it's why this movie is bad that is just kind of shocking to me. So let's just kind of get into this movie. Joel Kinnaman is the star of this movie, and maybe that's one of the biggest issues of this. I like Joel Kinnaman as an actor. I think he's really well used in films like The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, where he can convey that badass guy with a lot of that kind of humor and smirk to him. That's when he's being used really well. In this movie, Silent Night, he is completely silent. So is the entire rest of the film, minus gun noises, action, atmosphere, etc., etc. There's very little dialogue. I think there's maybe a total of like 5 lines of dialogue spoken in the entire 100-minute runtime. And the issue is this feels like a gimmick one, where you're just like, okay, these characters actually should be speaking, even if you don't want to have Kinnaman's character speak because he gets shot in the neck at the very beginning of the movie and loses the ability to speak. Everyone else around him should be, so it's just very noticeable when they're not. So that was a gimmick in this movie that just didn't really work for me. The second one is Kinnaman's just not tasked for this role yet. I just don't think he is able to convey the bigness of this with the fact that he's giving a silent performance. I think he can do some of the menace well, but there just wasn't enough behind there as an actor that made him compelling to watch for 100 minutes completely silent. There just wasn't. And so that's one of the biggest flaws of this movie. But I would excuse that if the action was good. The issue with this movie is I went in wanting to see an action movie of a guy getting revenge. What I got instead was a movie that follows a guy grieving for his slain child. And of the 100-minute runtime, I'd venture to guess a good hour of this film is really just this character sitting in his trauma. And it keeps flashing back to the dead kid. And I wouldn't say that I find this movie offensive because I'm not someone who finds stuff offensive easily. I will say with this movie, however, Silent Night, I did find it in poor taste and I just didn't appreciate cutting back to a dead kid every little bit. It left a really sour taste in my mouth watching it, where I'm just like, this is actually really unfun to watch. This is really depressing. And it almost felt like at times John Woo was trying to make a larger commentary on American society, this idea of kids being gunned down and these parents tragically grieving and like kind of losing their minds and resorting to violence and the cycle of violence. At times it almost felt like that was what the movie was trying to do, but it's not doing that. And if it is trying to do that, then it's doing it really poorly. But it did really feel like it was trying to be a reflection of the gun culture, mass shooting society that America is currently being faced with. And it left such a sour taste in my mouth. And that's not me trying to be any form of a purist of cinema. That's not me trying to be a gatekeeper of what directors can and can't direct. It was just solely watching that movie. The imagery in this movie is so brutal, and the traumatic nature of this Joel Kinnaman performance of keep coming back to the kid getting shot is just so overbearing in this movie that I just naturally led me to think about that. Maybe other people didn't have that experience. I did while watching this movie. We get into about the hour mark of this movie, and this character finally starts going for the action scenes that we've been promised. The issue with these action sequences is John Woo was this revolutionary director in the 1990s, and he hasn't directed an American film, like I said, since the early 2000s. And it kind of shows the action feels not necessarily dated, but it does feel like it hasn't caught up to the times, where it's just like we've now had the John Wick revolution of action. We've had so many movies come in the vein of John Wick that this film just the action felt like kind of a bad John Wick movie, to be completely honest. There wasn't anything that was so incredibly great about the action. There's some cool set pieces in this movie. I cannot deny that John Woo has an eye for action, and there are good set pieces in it. It's just that as it goes on, it feels a very repetitive, and it doesn't feel like it's showing me anything new. There are some well staged ones. There's one at the very end that kind of involves like a bunch of mirrors, and it almost looks like a disco room. And that one's pretty well shot. And like I said, a lot of this film is fairly well shot. There are some really good like vehicle combat sequences, but overall this movie is just far too mean for my spirit. It wasn't an enjoyable watch. I found it pretty tormenting, and not in a way that I found rewarding. So I cannot say Silent Night gave me anything that I was hoping it was going to give me, and I can say that what it was trying to give me did not work for me in any way. This was a pretty massive disappointment. I really did not enjoy sitting there in that theater watching this movie and watch it unfold that the way it did. And I'm giving this movie 1 out of 5 stars. It really just did not click for me. I would not suggest seeing this movie. So that's my review of Silent Night. So thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Take care and bye bye.